Hi students, welcome to the first lecture videos of the course. Welcome to the first week of the class. We're going to be studying Diocletian and Constantine, and we're going to be looking at the foundations of the Middle Ages, what it means to study medieval history. I'm going to use a combination of videos from YouTube and videos on MediaSite throughout the semester. This week they're going to be from YouTube, or I'm going to upload them to YouTube and you'll view them as YouTube videos. Today, as you can see, for the beginning of the PowerPoint, and for those of you who haven't taken a class with me before, this will be the same for the entire semester. We're going to look at the ancient Roman world, the world that gave rise to the Middle Ages. Then we're going to look at this world in crisis, the 3rd century crisis, the way that changes the Roman Empire. And then we're going to look at our two main historical figures that we're going to study today, the emperors Diocletian and Constantine, how they changed the Roman Empire in response to this crisis, how that lays the foundations for this, the period that we know as the Middle Ages. And then at the bottom of the screen here, you're going to see a list of key terms. Those key terms are the historical period, late antiquity, the Antonine Plague, the Emperor Diocletian himself, the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, and the Edict of Milan. Now I have the PowerPoint up here for the lecture, but I also have it uploaded to the weekly module just as a PowerPoint. So anything that the screen capture doesn't include, you can see it more clearly on the PowerPoint that you have to hand. Okay then, so just for clarification, just because we're at the beginning of the semester, each PowerPoint when we start a new week's material will have an outline and also have key terms. The key terms will be the components of the material that, and when you prepare for tests for this class in particular, you'll want to make sure you have a very good grasp on what those terms are and what is significant about them. Lots of students fall into the trap of just describing the terms. If you just say Diocletian was an emperor, half credit if you're lucky. If you say Diocletian was an emperor, and he's significant because of the reforms that he made to the Roman Empire, and you explain what those reforms are, that's explaining significance. Simply saying that he's an emperor, simply describing him, simply saying that the Milvian Bridge, for example, was a battle that Constantine won, that, again, is not explaining the significance. The Battle of Milvian Bridge was a battle that Constantine won, and it was significant because it brought Constantine to power, it ushered in the changes that he would make to the Roman Empire. Then you're getting at the significance. So please be sure to keep that in mind as you're taking down these terms. Please note them as I come to them in the lecture material. We have a number of themes that we're studying in this course, a number of questions, big picture questions that we're thinking about throughout this course. The lecture material this week is going to look at 3 of them. Firstly, what are the civilizations that develop in the Mediterranean after the fall of the Roman Empire? This is the first week. We're introducing the material. Roman Empire hasn't fallen yet, but you will start to see how the Mediterranean is going to change in response to changes that are happening in the Roman Empire. So kind of keep an eye for the beginnings of the answers to some of the answers to that question. 2 other questions we're going to look at over the course of the semester that are dealt with here. What is the economic structure of the medieval Mediterranean? So what's the economic basis of this society? What is money? What is considered to be a value? How do people make money? How do they increase the value that they hold? Again, we're in the first week. We're not properly looking at a medieval society yet, but we are looking at the society that produces the medieval society. So a lot of times when I'm talking about the medieval economy or medieval economic structure, I'm going to reference back to this lecture and I'm going to say, remember what this came from. Remember how this is different from the later years of the Roman Empire. So it's very important that you have a clear idea of the economic structure of the Roman economy. Lastly, religion. What role does religion play in this society? And this is exactly the same scenario. We're in week 1. This isn't medieval religion, this is pre-medieval religion, but we need to know where medieval religion came from. And a lot of the ideas of how, let's say, church and state interact with one another during the medieval period, a lot of the foundations for that are being established in this week's material. So it's very important that you think about the role of religion in this society and the relationship of religion to the power of the state as we move through this material. This week. So I hope that gives you a focus for studying this material. And now I want to dive right in to introducing the study of the Middle Ages. We have these different historical periods that you see on the slide here. Now, I've written that these are useful for historians, not so much for people who lived in these times. And so you can see them divided up here. We have the prehistoric periods, Paleolithic period and the Neolithic period. Then we have ancient history, medieval history, modern history, and contemporary history. Oftentimes, this period, what they're calling the modern age, we tend to call early modern history. And then we call everything after 1789, everything after the French Revolution, we call that modern history. But here we have modern and contemporary. I like early modern and modern. If you think 1493 is modern, well, I'd be surprised. I'd be surprised if you find a lot of people who are really comfortable calling 1500 modern history. As I said, these are useful terms for us as historians and us as students of history. We're trying to understand how to group different historical years, these different periods, and their different, what's the phrase I'm looking for here? These different periods and the different ways that we group them, their different characteristics, is very helpful for us as we study these times to be able to break history down into these groups. Doesn't change, as I've said in the PowerPoint, it doesn't change much for people who lived during these times. If you were living in 1492 and then 3 years later you wouldn't notice, I don't think necessarily, that your whole world had changed and now you were living in another historical age. So there's always going to be some overlap. It doesn't reflect immediate changes that happen, but they're useful periods of categorization for us. Now, I want to introduce another period that's called the period of late antiquity. And the period of late antiquity is kind of a more recent idea that's become increasingly popular and increasingly well established. And it's a period of transition between ancient history. So we have ancient Greece, ancient Rome, people are wearing togas, you have these great empires, and then you have medieval period where you have kind of knights and kings and castles, and there has to be some kind of transition. Remember, I said that all these periods are theoretical. No one said, today I'm living in the ancient age, tomorrow or next week I'm going to be living in the medieval age. So all of these, this division of history into periods is something that's theoretical. But what I want you to keep in mind, and so in real life, we know that there are transition periods, sometimes long transition periods. But this period called late antiquity, kind of a sub-period, if you will, is, I think, helpful and helps us connect the ancient and medieval periods. It means that we still have a lot of the characteristics of ancient Greece and Rome. We still have the Roman Empire. We still have Greek learning. Those of you who took ancient Greece and Rome with me know how the Romans created a government that secured Greek learning and the continuation of Greek learning, and created a period of peace in which this culture, Greek culture, the culture of Greek science and art and philosophy could become established. And that success is still present in the Mediterranean. But what we see during this period of late antiquity is that Greek learning and Roman government, so the Roman Empire, and knowledge of Greek philosophy and Greek science, these are in decline. It is also a period before the rise of Islam. So remember that we have this question, this first theme that you'll see if you look on the second page of your syllabus. What are the three civilizations to emerge after the fall of the Roman Empire? And three of them are medieval Europe, as we know it, knights and castles, and Western Europe, France, Italy, England, Scotland, Spain, Germany. The Byzantine Empire, the part of the Roman Empire that survives in Eastern Europe, and then Islamic culture and society in the Mediterranean. So that's the beginning of answering that question. What are the three civilizations? These are the three. And we're going to look at how these different civilizations interact with one another. And that's characteristic of the medieval period. But in this late antique period, that typically we say lasts from about 300 to 600, you don't have Islam yet. We just have the two. And so that's another reason why this is considered, it's not really the ancient world, because we're going to see the complete decline and disappearance of the Roman Empire in Western Europe. So that doesn't seem like it's the ancient world anymore. But we also don't have the presence of Islam. And so that makes us think, well, maybe it's not quite the medieval world either. So this is also part of why the period of late antiquity is considered kind of a halfway house. I'm running a little ahead of my PowerPoint, but since I'm going to halt the video here and I'm going to make another video as we move forward, just to reiterate, these are the three civilizations that make up the study of medieval history. Lots of people think that medieval history is just made up of medieval Europe, the knights and castles that we find in Western Europe. But more and more when we study the Middle Ages, we're studying not only medieval Europe, but we're studying the Byzantine Empire. So that's Eastern Europe, modern-day Turkey, some parts of the Middle East, the parts where the Roman Empire survives. We're also studying North Africa, Middle East, and parts of Spain that are characterized by the practice of Islam. And we're going to see all three of these different civilizations interacting with one another. That's part of what makes the study of medieval history so interesting. So I want you to keep that in mind going forward. Each, after the fall of the Roman Empire, which we haven't got to yet, but I'm introducing the material. After the fall of the Roman Empire, each of these three civilizations is basically going to attempt to replicate the successes of the Roman Empire. And in some respects, they're going to be more successful than the Roman Empire. And in some respects, they're never going to quite reach that level of achievement. And so that's a big part of what we're studying. How do these different civilizations interact with one another? How and to what extent are they successful in replacing the Roman Empire? I'm going to leave it there for this video, and I'm going to kind of introduce the context of medieval history in the next video.